YouTube, good morning. Today's task, what we're going to be doing is installing this handle set onto my front door at my house here. So this is a quick set. It's got the little rekey option that we can use. This is usually pretty straightforward. All you normally do is just unscrew the hardware that's there and replace it with the new hardware. However, if you notice, this down here, you have to drill a hole for it, and it says it adjusts vertically and horizontally to fit your door, but there currently is no hole in the door, so I'm hoping there's a template or something that I can use to drill the new hole. So I've assembled some tools that I think I'm going to need. I've got my cordless drill with my screw attachment on there so I can take the old door hardware off quickly, some drill bits, tape measure, something to mark with, and my guard dog. So let's get started. So I'm going to start by removing this lower handle and then drilling the hole where I need. I'm going to leave this in place for now so I can lock the door and work on this, drill it from the outside without having the door open and close. But again, first you just remove this. This is very simple. Just take out the two screws. It's probably better if you have a longer extension here, but this is what I've got. I'm not really worried about the old hardware because I'm not going to be reusing it. And I'll take these screws out here, and this whole assembly will come out. So conveniently, when I opened my box, this template was laying right on top. This is pretty straightforward. This is your top hole where your locking mechanism goes. This is your second hole where the door handle goes. And this hole down here, I guess there are three different options as to where you can drill that lower hole where the handle is going to attach to the door. So what I'm going to do is grab a few pieces of tape and I'm going to center everything. You want this to be on the edge of the door. This line here, this dotted line, you want this to be centered on your old hole, your existing hole. And then down here is where you're going to drill your new hole. Okay, so for my template, I've done a couple of things. I've made sure that that dotted line edge lines up with the edge of the door and has equal spacing all the way up and down. I went ahead and looked from the back side and made sure that this was centered in that hole, okay? And then I went in and just ripped off that top part because this is kind of irrelevant at this point. This is where it is. I'm not drilling a hole there. So I made sure everything is sitting nice and flat, taped it to the door. The next thing is to drill my hole. Now you want to drill your hole according to where it's centered on which one of these holes here. Mine is centered on this hole. So the line on the left is the one that I want to drill the hole with. Make sure you pay attention to that. So this says that the mounting point floats, so it's probably not that big of a deal with this, but if you have different hardware, it might be. So make sure you're paying attention to which one of these holes it's centered with and make sure you drill the proper hole. So for me, it's going to be this one right here, the one on the left in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with the appropriate size drill bit. So the instructions say to use a 7/16 drill bit, which is almost a half. I do not have one that large. The largest I have is a 3/8, which would be a 6/16. So it's pretty close, just a 16th off. That'll probably be sufficient. So I'm going to use a smaller drill bit to get through the door first and come back and enlarge the hole with my 3/8 drill bit. So I did look at the instructions, believe it or not, and it did say to use the middle hole. Now this is very important. You want to try to make sure you're getting this as 90 degrees as possible to the door, both this direction and this direction. So make sure you're paying attention to the angle at which you're hitting this hole and try to keep it as perpendicular to the door as possible. And then from there, just pull the trigger and drill the hole. So make sure you penetrate both sides of the door. And grab your larger drill bit. And same thing. And I think for the other hole, I'm going to go ahead and drill from this side coming out just to make sure that I don't miss the hole going through with the other drill bit. I want to make sure I drill in the same spot. So I'm going to go inside and do that. So before I go any further, I'm going to test fit this hole to make sure it's going to accept the post. And you see this post is adjustable, it kind of floats in there, that's pretty cool. But let's see if it fits. And it does. So we're good to proceed. So the first piece to go back in would be this piece right here. The beveled edge of the striker is going towards the door. So go ahead and just stick that into place and reinstall your 2 screws, or use the new screws, whichever. It's not a big deal. They're just holding this into position. So the next step I'm going to go ahead and perform then is to install the handle, or the outer handle, the inner handle, and you're going to need these 2 little screws here that are in the package. So this is pretty straightforward. You just kind of sandwich the door between all these parts. Just stick your bottom post in, stick this top part in, just like that. Hold that in position, stick this in, and put your screws in. That's pretty easy. Trickiest part is finding the screw hole on the other side of this. So now to install this new stuff, I'm going to go grab a screwdriver though, because I don't want to use my drill on the new hardware and risk scratching the hardware. So I'm going to grab a screwdriver. I'll be back. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of snug this up a little bit just to hold it in position a little, because the next screw is going to be a little more difficult to put in place. And that's because this door handle's in the way. So getting this screw in is a little bit tricky. What you want to do here is kind of push the handle down, stick the screw through there. You're going to have to release it to let the pressure off so that you can get this screw shimmied into where it needs to be. And get it started by hand. And we're in. You can see that it's threading in. And then so the next thing I'm going to do is get the bottom part of the outer handle aligned, because you see as I'm moving the outer handle, it's affecting the position of this. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything on the outside lined up first, then come back and fix this. So this is what I was referring to just a moment ago. You can see this is all moving around on the front of the door. So the way you get that secured is by using these 2 pieces in your kit here. And this is going to go on the inside of the door like this. Go through the door and secure this in position. Now I'm going to make sure I do measurements and everything using a tape measure to make sure these 2 distances are the same and these 2 distances are the same. That way it's on there nice and straight. So again, take a tape measure, make sure that these 2 measurements are the same, and also these 2 measurements are the same from top to bottom. Once you're sure that you've got everything all lined up, go ahead and snug up this screw on the back here. It doesn't have to be super tight, it just has to be a little snug so that this handle's not going to move. Once you've got everything lined up on the outside, just kind of take your hand and get this straightened up as well and snug this down. Start with this screw, as you can't really get to the other one. Just kind of snug it down and then push the handle down to access this one. Making sure to take care and not scratch your hardware. because I'm OCD, I'm gonna make sure these are straight up. There we go. The next thing is just check the functionality of the door. It opens and closes freely with no binding. And as you can see, we're looking good. I'll check the outside as well, make sure that works. So once you're satisfied that everything is lined up properly and in place, go ahead and give this just a little bit more of a snug up down there. And then place your decorative trim into position. Now this has a little notch on the bottom, or a little notch in here. You want to make sure that goes towards the bottom so it's not visible. Just pop it into place. Easy. So now we're going to change out our deadbolt. This is just as simple as doing the last one, even more so because we're going to have to drill a hole. Just take out the 2 screws holding the deadbolt here. Pull the mechanism out. Open the door. You see my deadbolt was turned, so I had to slide the slider on the top to get that to come out. And again, just remove the 2 bolts here. Or the 2 screws, I should say. I was thinking deadbolt. And the mechanism outside is already just hanging, so just pull that out. If yours has this bit here like this, it's just pressed in, so you're just gonna have to pull that out. I just took the screwdriver, stuck it in there, and pulled it. You saw that. And then slide this part out. Maybe need to pry that from the inside as well. So now we're ready to install our new stuff. So the new deadbolt hardware has a few different pieces to it, as you can see. This is pretty simple to work with. Just take this. You see these holes pop right into here, if you can see that. I know the lighting's kind of bad, I apologize. And then this part would just go over top of that, and then it just slides in the door like the old stuff did. Okay, so the instructions say to make sure that this curve is on the bottom. So make sure the curve is on the bottom. Then slide that into position, and use your screws to affix this into place. And again, you can either reuse the screws that you removed, which is what I'm going to do, or you can use the new screws and the new hardware. Just make sure you're using the same type of wood screws like this. From here, again, it's just a matter of sandwiching the 2 bits of new hardware using the screws between the door. So obviously you want the key side to go to the outside. Okay, so this piece actually goes through the bottom of there, just like that. That doesn't actually go through the locking mechanism. So on the back side here, you're gonna have to line up 2 different parts. You've got to make sure that this pin goes in this hole, and then this pin goes in that hole. Gonna be a little tricky. Okay, so once you've got those 2 pieces lined up, just insert your 2 screws. And again, I am not going to use a drill here because I do not want to mar up the new hardware. It looks nice, I want to keep it that way. So I'm going to get these started by hand, come back and tighten them up with a screwdriver. So I've got that started, grab my screwdriver. So I'm not going to tighten that all the way up yet because I want to make sure that everything's lined up and square with the door on the inside and bolt the outside. Once I'm confident everything's lined up and looks good, I'm going to go ahead and just snug these screws down. And again, check for proper operation of everything. Make sure everything's working well, no binding. Okay. All right, so everything seems to be working well. We are good to go. Everything looks good. Just gonna clean the door up, clean up my mess. And thank you for watching, YouTube. Make sure you check out my channel. Make sure you subscribe as well.